Hello and welcome to this week's Culture Review. I'm your host, Takumbo Salako. Joining me is my esteemed colleague, David Morrigan. David, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Well, this week we're concentrating on Cannes, looking back at the Palme d'Or winner, the Iranian dissident Jafar Panahi, and his film It Was Just an Accident. David, he's not a household name, but he's a very revered director. Tell us, for people who don't know anything at all about him, what's his background?
Well, as you said, It Was Just an Accident won the Palme d'Or, and it's the first film since 1997 to do so, and at the time it was Taste of Cherry by Abbas Kiarostami. And Jafar Panahi is one of Iran's just greatest filmmaker, alongside the likes of Mohammad Rasulov, for instance. And he is somebody who has clashed with the repressive Iranian authorities for many, many years now. He was placed under house arrest, arrested for endangering national security, and banned from travel. And in 2022, he was imprisoned for supporting his fellow filmmaker, Mohammad Rasulov, and later went on a hunger strike and was released a year later. And It Was Just an Accident is his first film since then. And it's worth saying that ever since all these years, Jafar Panahi has continued to make films in defiance of the repressive authorities, and these films have come to major European festivals. So, for example, in 2011, Jafar Panahi's film This Is Not a Film was smuggled out of Iran on a USB stick that was itself hidden inside a cake in order to get to the festival. In his film Taxi Tehran went to the Berlinale in 2015 and ended up winning the Golden Bear. And in 2022, his film No Bears was in Venice, where it won a special jury prize. So genuinely, if anyone hasn't heard of Jafar Panahi, these are three very, very good films to start off with.
David, you've had the chance to see the film. Tell us what's it about.
Well, it's first and foremost a richly deserved Palme, I'll say that. It was shot in Iran secretly because Jafar Panahi did not have the permit from Iranian authorities, and the film was later on edited in France. And because this film is an indictment of the Islamist Republic and criticizes the corruption and the sins of state despotism, and also shows women not wearing a hijab at times. And this film is a very taut film compared to many other films in competition at Cannes this year. And it tells the story of a family, a father and mother and their daughter, who are in a car who accidentally run over a dog. And the car breaks down and fortuitously breaks down in front of a shop where one person there offers to help out. And another person there, Vahid, seems to have a very visceral reaction to the father coming into the shop. And he recognizes a noise which seems to come from the father's prosthetic leg. And he believes that this is the man who is an intelligence officer, or who was an intelligence officer, who previously tortured him. And because of this uncertainty, but this very visceral reaction he has, he kidnaps the father and plans to bury him alive. But because of the protestations from the father figure, the seeds of doubt are sown. So what he does is goes off and seeks help and advice from other victims of this potential monster. People like a photographer, a bride-to-be and her husband, and this live wire of a man who is the only one who can positively identify the potential torturer, because he has seen him without being blindfolded, like the others were. Therefore, the doubt. And essentially, it's a film about the price of revenge, whether you should use violence to combat violence, what it does to your own humanity, how you can escape the trauma that has been inflicted, and whether that's at all possible. And it is, like I said, a taut, a gripping film, utterly engrossing, and one that surprised me in the sense that it's actually very humorous. There's some slapstick elements to this, and it is something which is rather remarkable in the sense that it talks about these very powerful things, these very dark things, but at the same time does so in a way that recalls Waiting for Godot, which is mentioned in the film, but also as if Waiting for Godot was spliced with Weekend at Bernie's. And I'll say one more thing without spoiling the film at all. Not only is it a very richly deserved Palme, but the ending left my jaw on the floor. It's one of those moments, it's a very simply filmed scene and uses sound to a devastating effect. And it is almost like a horror film.
Well, perhaps we can just have a quick clip of the film now before we go any further. Let's just see an extract from it right now.
میگم دوز این داروی شاید زیاد بوده کارشو ساخته.
نیم ساعت پیش چکش کردم. الان فقط باید منتظر باشیم.
تا کی باید منتظر باشیم؟
تا وقتی که بهوش بیاد.
چه فرقی میکنه بابا؟ چه بیهوش چه باهوش یارو میخوایم بکنیم تو گور.
حق داره بدون چرا گرفتیمش.
نه بابا. قشر خاکستری هم بالاخره زبون وا کرد. اینقدر حرف نزدی ببینی باده داره از کدوم ور میاد بپری تو باد. عیزه به. کسخل جان. این بابا صدا تو شنیده، تو هر گوری باشی 2 دقیقه‌ای پیدات میکنه، کون تو پاره میکنه. حالا ببین.
David, you very well summed up his history with the Iranian government, that history of conflict that he's had with them. What reactions have there been, though, to this film, his latest work?
Well, Panahi returned to Tehran at the beginning of the week, and to great applause at the airport. There were scenes that went online, even people shouting "Women, Life, Freedom," the slogan of the protests in 2022 and 2023. But there are still concerns for his well-being, because obviously his previous films have been banned in the country, and it is a very politically charged film that was made illegally in the eyes of the Iranian authorities, and predictably the reactions have been very lukewarm from the Iranian state media and officials. There's even been a diplomatic row with France. The French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot reacted to the win of the film by saying that it was a gesture of resistance against the Iranian regime's oppression. And this in turn prompted Tehran to summon France's chargé d'affaires, as it's called, to protest against these comments, which were deemed insulting. And the foreign ministry spokesperson said, and I quote, "I'm not an art expert, but we believe that artistic events and art in general should not be exploited to pursue political objectives." There's a lot to unpack there. Primarily, if you're not an art expert and you're talking about something that you don't know, then your opinion is null and void. But art is worth saying. I mean, there is a fundamental misunderstanding here that art is not created in a vacuum. It is a medium that reflects thoughts, emotions, empathy, and is a reflection of the world that goes on around us, even if it is hidden in layers of allegory. Not so here. But also to the words of Rachida Dati, the French Minister of Culture, who told Euronews with regards to a petition signed in Cannes this year by several artists with regards to the industry silence of the crimes happening in Gaza, that culture and politics go hand in hand. And moreover, this whole thing reminded me of a quote by Toni Morrison, who said that the best art is political, and that you ought to be able to make art that is unquestionably political, but also irrevocably beautiful at the same time. And that's the thing. At the moment, people tend to think that art is either politically charged and therefore has very little artistic value, or that it is art for art's sake and then that is a bit vacant. No, these two things can coexist, and films, cinema in general, feeds empathy, but not only that, it empowers consciousness.
Indeed, well, I'm not going to argue with your defence or Toni Morrison's defence of art, but, you know, Cannes is always under fire for whatever choices it makes, and it's so easy for some people to look at this and say, this is just a political award. It's just, you know, they're putting it on a platform. You know, is this a worthy winner?
Well, as I've said, it is absolutely a worthy winner, considering the other films that have won prizes this year. This one stood out. for me at least. And it's true, there are very often reactions towards Cannes. Oh, it's the self-congratulatory kind of, oh, well, of course it was going to win an award because it is politically charged. And that is, to put it mildly, utter rubbish. Because anyone who will get to see this film will understand why comments like that are tripe. But at the same time, there have been reactions in certain media and even in people that I've talked to about the film winning, who said, oh, well, this is the Cannes woke brigade at it again. And it's always this constant hammering of the word woke, which is essentially now the defense mechanism of all those who are trying to engage in culture wars, essentially, but also do this by commandeering this word, which has now lost all of its original meaning, and use it in order to essentially stoke division and a climate of fear even. And really, at this point, a discussion is, of course, necessary about the pitfalls of political correctness and how virtue signaling can be very, very frustrating. But at the same time, this is not the case here, and it is very tiresome to hear people automatically, without having seen the film, just bandy about this term, which, you know, the woke brigade, woke this, woke that. And these people should really look into the origins of that word and stop losing their intellectual credibility.
Indeed, I couldn't agree with you more there. But so let's talk now, get back focused to talk about not only Jafar Panahi, but other Iranian films, because you mentioned Mohammad Rasulov, who we had the pleasure of meeting and interviewing last year. For anyone who's looking to scratch beyond the surface, where should they start?
Well, I'd refer them back to our two favourite films of last year, which were My Favourite Cake by Mariam Moghadam and Betash Saniha, who have also fallen foul of the repressive Iranian government, who weren't able to come to the Berlinale to present their film because of the travel ban, and Mohammad Rasulov with The Seed of the Sacred Fig. These are films that deal with the protests in 2022 and 2023, and they are subversive in their own ways in the way that they use very different cinematic languages to comment about what is going on in Iran. But they are, in and of themselves, absolutely stunning films on an artistic level, gripping in all the right ways. And we had the opportunity, as you say, to interview Mohammad Rasulov, who very movingly talked about his fellow filmmakers who were working in very difficult situations and who were transforming difficulties into acts of beauty.
Indeed. Well, let's just hear now from the man himself, and a small extract of what he told us just a few months ago about the conditions of making films in Iran.
خصوصاً کارگردان‌ها و فیلمسازای ایرانی که زیر سانسور دارن اوقات خیلی سختی رو میگذرونن و خیلی هاشون تو همین شرایط دارن آثار خیلی ارزشمندی خلق میکنن. من فکر میکنم که نباید فراموش کنیم که اون شرایط یک شرایط ویژه‌ایه و بسیاری از افراد دارن از دل همون سختی ها زیبایی خلق میکنن و بسیار بسیار کارشون تأثیر بزرگ داره و عالیه.
So yes, these are artists that work within the brutal confines of a regime, and they offer windows into a part of the world and what is going on that Western audiences may not be aware of. And they work in incredibly difficult circumstances. And on an artistic level, they are incredible films. But also, they are films that should not be taken for granted by Western audiences who have the privilege to be able to see films by filmmakers who put it all on the line, literally their lives on the line, in order to have films that protest against and challenge oppression, tyranny, misogyny, and do so in order to remind audiences that yes, these films provide escapism, but they remind us that essentially cinema, like many, many art forms, can still speak truth to power.
David, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the work of Jafar Panahi, the Palme d'Or winner with his film It Was Just an Accident. Do join us again next week. We'll be back with more in our Culture Review.